Well, since the children already looked at this, the meaning of these words of the song, maybe I should share them with you. I didn't at the second service. I hesitated because a certain relative of mine was disparaging me about this. I won't tell you what his name was, but his initials are Stanley Combs. He reminded me that this is really not historical. It's tradition, it's legend at least. But the original song, The 12 Days of Christmas, was written in the 16th century, as we understand it, when the King of England had already had several divorces and had petitioned the Pope for another divorce, and the Pope refused to give it to him, and because of that, the King of England broke from the Roman Church and formed the Church of England. And for a time, then, the Roman Catholics were sort of outlawed in England, and in order to witness to their faith, they developed this song as a kind of code for people about what it was. And so, a partridge in a pear tree was Jesus Christ, as they already said. The two turtle doves are the Old and New Testament. The three French hens stand for faith, hope, and love. The four calling birds are for the four Gospels. The five gold rings recall the Torah, or the Law, which is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. The 6 geese a-laying stand for the 6 days of creation. The 7 swans a-swimming represent the 7-fold gifts of the Spirit. The 8 maids a-milking are 8 beatitudes. The 9 ladies dancing are the 9 fruits of the Spirit, as we read them in Galatians chapter 5. The 10 lords a-leaping are the 10 commandments. The 11 pipers piping stand for the 11 faithful disciples. And the 12 drummers drumming symbolize 12 points of belief, the Apostles' Creed. So there you have it. It's not historical support so much, but it is tradition, and now you know the meaning. The story, I've been trying to avoid this story in Matthew because it's not a happy one, the killing of the innocent children by Herod following the birth of Christ, is, however, a stark reminder for us that Jesus was born into the real world, not a fantasy world, not a dream world of any kind, but into the real world, a world that we live in, which often has pain and suffering for us, as well as good news. And at least that part of the story, I want to say, reminds me of Christ being Emmanuel, God with us 24/7 in this real world. But the reading from Matthew begins with the wise men leaving the manger, and or at least leaving the Christ child. And it reminds me of a story that I want to share with you that was shared by Mike O'Mary, who wrote a little book called the Three Wise Men and Other Stories. Mike tells how when he was in 2nd grade, one year the teacher decided they would put on a Christmas play. And so all the children were assigned different parts, and Mike happened to be assigned the second wise man. And so his role, which was not really difficult, was to walk up to the manger, to Mary and to the baby, kneel and say, we are wise men, I bring you frankincense, which is the second gift, right? And that was not hard, and their teacher, Sister Julia, impressed upon them how the wise men needed to walk and act with dignity and grace, because they were very important people, and they would be wearing bathrobes and crowns. So that made sense to Mike, until he learned that Sister Julia had assigned the first wise man, the chief wise man, the one who brought the gold, to a young boy by the name of Jim Walston. Now, Jim was not the sharpest knife in the box. His elevator didn't go the whole way to the top. And so he was pretty slow, as most kids looked at him. They saw him slow, and not only that, they thought he was among this class of relatively poor kids, the poorest. And they knew this because every morning, as school began, Sister Julia would ask them to stand, state their name, and what they had for breakfast. For breakfast. You know, like ham and eggs or oatmeal. And every morning, when it came to Jim Walston, he would stand, he would smile, and he would say, nothing. He had nothing for breakfast. So all the rest of the class would laugh. And they knew he was the poorest kid in the class. And most of the kids kind of avoided him. They didn't seem to get along too well with him. So making Jim Walston the chief wise man, the first wise man, the one to bring the gold, didn't make any sense to Mike. But that's what Sister Julie did. Rehearsals began right after Thanksgiving, and every day they rehearsed. Unfortunately, Jim was having trouble remembering his lines. I mean, they weren't difficult. Walks up to the manger and kneels and says, "We are three wise men, I bring you gold." He couldn't remember it. And every time they went through this, he would mess up the lines and the kids would laugh. It came pretty close to the actual playtime, and the kids were saying to one another, Sister Julie's going to have to assign his part to somebody else. Mike, we think you're going to get it because you're the second wise man. You'll move up. And so he was expecting that when one day Sister Julie asked him to stay after school. And what she said to him was, I want you to help Jim Walston remember his lines when we perform the play. I want you to practice his lines just before you go in. And if he forgets his line when he kneels down, I want you to kneel down right beside him and whisper the lines into his ear so that nobody in the audience will know that he flubbed up. Well, Mike was stunned by this, and yet, okay, that's what his teacher wanted him to do. And he agreed to do it. The next night was the performance. Everything was going smoothly. Mary and Joseph had entered properly, and the innkeeper had rejected their invite into the inn. The manger and the goats and the cows and all that were set up, and the shepherds came, and then it was a turn for the three wise men. Mike had gone over Jim's lines with him right before they went in, and they went in and knelt. And just as they knelt, Jim Walston, the first wise man, froze. He didn't say a word. And Mike thought, uh-oh. He started to kneel down to whisper to him what his lines were when Jim looked up at him, gave him a big smile, and broke out the lines just as he was meant to do, perfectly. And that stunned Mike. He couldn't believe it. Stunned him so much that he couldn't talk. And then the third wise man, Joey Emprak, hit him in the back and nudged him. So he woke up, figured where he was, and said, "And I bring you gold." Wasn't what he was supposed to say. He was stunned. And the whole audience went into shock. They didn't say anything. A couple of coughs. And then Joey, the third wise man, knelt down and said, "Yeah, and I bring you gold also." And everybody started to laugh. Joey had rescued him. He had bailed him out. He had shown compassion to him. Years later, Mike says that when his boss was having a hard time at work, and there was rumor that maybe his boss would be replaced, maybe by him, Mike thought about that time he was in second grade and how he had been bailed out. And so he went to his boss and helped him out a little bit so that he didn't get replaced. He showed him some compassion. I think there's a learning in that for us. this Christmas and as we begin a new year, show a little compassion to one another. Show a little compassion to those around you. And I can guarantee you your life will be much better.